Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy that you could be here today for Big Fat Pregnancy Talks. Today, we're going to have some community and conversation around early pregnancy worries. So, things that you might be thinking about while you're fat and pregnant or while you're fat and trying to conceive. So, before we begin, I definitely like to go over some acknowledgements, predictions, and disclaimers about any workshop that I host. So our predictions here discussing conception, pregnancy, identities, and beliefs around these topics may bring up uncomfortable feelings. We all have different experiences and we all relate differently to these ideas and concepts. I want to acknowledge that the representation of Black folks in birth is compounded and harm is deepened when we layer on identities. So, topics, access to care, and barriers that are discussed, they may disproportionately impact BIPOC, queer, trans, and historically marginalized folks who are joining or watching this replay from home. I am here as an educator. My scope is limited to my personal experiences and my professional studies. It's not intended to serve as medical advice, and you should always consult your intuition and self, as well as your care provider. This slide was adapted from the Lakeside Global Institute and Jenna J.B. Brown over at Love Over Fear Wellness. Some group agreements. So before I start any workshop, I like to mention that there are some group agreements that we generally like to abide by. So that would be, first and foremost, everyone is encouraged to participate and everyone is welcome to pass. So this kind of experience, this kind of conversation is really enriched when people join in and discuss, but everyone's welcome to stay in the background and listen, whatever's comfortable for you. You can utilize the chat box for questions, and if you're more comfortable that way than speaking out, please do so. If not, you can do so the other way around. You can speak up instead of using the chat. There should be a live transcription function moving at the bottom of your screen. So if you don't see that and you need a transcript after the recording, let me know. And then if anything that you want to share is personal or is something that's maybe not something you want to share with people who are not present, let me know. Enter it in the chat, raise your hand, say so verbally, and I'll pause the recording so that you can speak freely, and it won't be recorded. As we enter this space, we are coming together from a variety of different places in our lives, identities, days. We could have had a good day, a bad day, and that can be influencing how we show up here together. So one of the tools that I've learned and like to use is the Oops Ouch tool. So we do assume here at Big Fat Pregnancy that best intentions are what people are coming to the table with. And that being said, we're humans. We're going to harm each other. We're going to make mistakes. And so this is a way that you can enter in the chat if you are feeling like there might be something that you said that was problematic, racist, not how you wanted to phrase it. You can acknowledge that with an oops, and we can either pause and discuss it, or you can talk about it with the person who you may have harmed. And then ouch, that's used for the person that was harmed. So if something that's being talked about is harming you, it's hard to listen to, you're just not here for it, you can say ouch. And we can either decide as a community, a small community, if we're going to pause and talk about it, if there's repair that needs to be happening, or if the person speaking can recognize it and modify their behavior in the moment. So it's a tool that we can use to keep each other accountable and recognize when those harms may happen. This is kind of on top of the personal story. What we learn here can leave here, but what is said here stays here. So the only people who will receive the recording of this are people who signed up. Again, if there's something that you want to talk about that you don't want to be shared, then we can pause the recording and do so. And lastly, ask for what you need. If there's something that would make learning easier for you in this space, communicating easier, please don't hesitate to let me know. So I want to thank everyone who's here. I'm so excited to be in this space with you. And I thought we'd start by doing some introductions. So my name is Christina James, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm located in Woodinville, Washington, on the stolen lands of the Duwamish and Stillaguamish peoples. I bring to this training with me some social identities. I'm white, cis female, disabled, mom, wife, lifelong learner, survivor. I come from a middle class upbringing. I'm a super feeling human being. My Enneagram 2, I'm a Sagittarius. So as a heads up, if you follow me on Instagram and came to this presentation from that kind of space, you may know that I use the word fat when describing myself and those living in large bodies. And I know that not everyone's comfortable with that term yet, due to its long time use as an insult, bullying term, keeping people down. So if you prefer not to use that, if you prefer to say overweight, those living in larger bodies, chubby, chunky, soft, delicious, or you have other words that you identify with, please feel free to use them and know that you don't have to use the word fat, but that's the word that I use going forward. Know that it's a word that I've reclaimed as a descriptor with no moral attachment or judgment. It's just something that I use. So I'd like to take a minute and have you all introduce yourselves. And it looks like someone would be more comfortable having us stop the recording. So I'm going to stop that for introductions, and we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So I want to just take a minute before we dive into our topic today to arrive. And so that may look different to different people. If you're watching the replay, you can grab a cup of coffee, you can pause in real time, take a stretch break. For those of us here, we can just take a nice deep breath if that feels comfortable to you. Eyes open, eyes closed, video off, camera on, whatever you like. Big breath in. And breath out. Thank you all so much for being in this space with me. So let's get to why we are here today. So as always, please interrupt me with questions, comments, concerns. Verbally, you can use the chat form if you're watching this replay and you're not here with us and you have questions, comments, or concerns. All my contact information is on the front page and the last page, meeting slides, and you're welcome to reach out anytime to further discuss any of this content. So, some of the most common concerns that I've heard from other fact-worthy folks revolve around these three categories on the screen. So these concepts and ideas of like, will people know? What will the shape of my belly be? Should I take pictures? None of my other friends are pregnant, and none of them are fat and pregnant if I do have a pregnant community. And then lastly, just around those kind of health concerns. I'm scared that my body weight, my shape, my size will lead to X, and X being some sort of health concern or intervention during pregnancy. So I want to talk about these a little bit more in depth. So, these questions that we ask ourselves, specifically around physical appearance, I've really found they all play into the concept of validation. So oftentimes as fat folks, all the time, all the time, that's aggressive, but oftentimes we don't get validated for how we feel, our experiences, our bodies, and we can't show up in the world as we are because we're constantly judged or shamed for doing so, just for existing in a body that doesn't look like the quote unquote normal body or ideal quote unquote ideal body. So it makes sense that when we layer on trying to conceive or pregnancy as identities, a lot of the times we're going to worry about what people think. If they are going to judge me because I'm eating a salad or judge me because I'm eating a burger, and will they do that even more if they know I'm pregnant? Will they see my shape? Will they see my belly and think that I'm just fat or fatter than I normally am? We don't have enough representation of fat bodies in maternity and paternity world for people to know that it's okay to look different all the time, of course, but especially when you're pregnant. And this lack of representation, I think, really does lead us to believe that internalize and to believe this held belief that fat people can't have healthy pregnancies, that being fat is bad, and that it dooms us to negative consequence after consequence. And when we think about this, it makes sense that all of those messages from social media, from friends and family, from care providers, it makes sense that these worries about our physical appearance would be something that you would think about as a fat person. So I just want to take a few minutes and talk about some of the information behind these statements, and then we'll have some time to discuss if that's what you all want. So will people know I'm pregnant? Probably not right away, especially, or what is considered the quote unquote normal timeline. So the uterus starts to expand beyond the pelvis in the second trimester. So usually between 12 and 16 weeks is when a person living in a smaller body can expect to start showing. But things like fat on your abdomen, where your weight is placed on your body, where your placenta presents, those can all have impacts on what shape of belly you have. And if you show earlier or later. If you have a placenta that presents anteriorly, which means in front, in the very front of your abdomen, while it doesn't have any impact on health, it can take longer to feel the baby kick, to find a heartbeat, and it may impact your shape. So that's something that you literally can't control your placenta implants where it implants, and you literally can't change that. So I, as an example, I'm over 6 feet tall and 300 pounds, and I didn't really start showing until about 22 weeks, maybe 23, 24 weeks, to really where I could look at me in the mirror and be like, a stranger would know that I was pregnant. What shape will my belly be? So there's a lot of really weird myths and beliefs about what does the shape of your belly mean, and can you interpret the sex of the baby, and how will your baby be born on the due date, and all sorts of strange things that are absolutely not connected to your belly shape, but what or contribute to your belly shape. But in reality, what actually determines the shape of your belly, how you present when you're pregnant, is the muscular structure, which includes the elasticity of your abdomen wall, the fetal position of the baby, weight distribution, the weight of the baby. Those will all impact shape. You can't predict what they will look like, even based on your body shape now. All belly shapes are normal and healthy, and many bellies fall outside of these quote unquote named shapes. So you'll see in the picture on the left right here, this is what we call a B-shaped belly. So if you see the top of this person's stomach comes down, indents, and then comes down. And no, that's not just for the pants of the person who's wearing these. That is actually how the belly presents even when there's no clothing. And then the picture on the right would be what you would see as a more traditional belly, which is going to be that D shape, which is a nice big round. And see, she has a little bit of another, or this person has another bit of a little shape down here, and that could be part of their B belly, or it could just be simply fat on their body. But those are kind of the two traditional shapes that you'll hear, B and D. So again, you can't predict what they will look like, and they're both normal and healthy. So, oops, went one slide too far here. Okay, so another common question that I get, or concern that I get, is pictures. Should I take pregnancy pictures? Should I take month-to-month pictures? Should I take pictures of me naked or with less clothing on? Should I take pictures professionally by myself, right? And my biggest piece of advice here is do what you're comfortable with, right? No one's going to be able to tell you what feels good for your body. My recommendation is always yes, absolutely 100% yes. If you want to take month-to-month shots, if you have the ability to pay for a professional photographer, or if you don't, still capturing So capturing that moment, my recommendation is always yes. At the end of your pregnancy, right, you don't have to show them to anybody if you don't want to. It's not mandated that you take pregnancy pictures, but you'll have them for yourself. And I think that's really important and can capture a really amazing process, even if you don't feel so stellar about it while you're doing it. I think finding a fat-friendly photographer can be key for comfort during this experience, or having a friend or family member do it, or even your partner or partners, participating can raise comfort levels and decrease anxiety. So I would absolutely recommend it, but again, it's totally up to you. So do any of these topics around physical appearance resonate with anyone? Does anyone want to share? If you are watching the replay, you can take a screenshot of this cute cat, and you can tag me and or DM me if you have anything else that resonates with you around appearance. And again, I'm going to pause so we can take a minute to discuss. Thank you so much. Okay, and we're back. So the next common concern that I want to talk about is this idea of not having any other friends who are pregnant, or maybe even any other friends who are pregnant in your like local area or social media world, anything. Maybe you're the first of your friend group to give birth. Maybe you don't have friends. Maybe you move around a lot and you're the only fat person that you know that's trying to conceive or is pregnant. This can feel really lonely, especially in the times of COVID, right? Where we can't get out in the traditional ways that we may have used before to socialize with people. And I found that when I was pregnant, it's often all I could think about and all I could talk about. And it's really nice to have people around you who share that experience, who are going through it at the same time as you, so that you can discuss what you're feeling, what you're thinking, the questions that you come up with in the middle of the night that you want to talk to with someone about. It's that connection and community is really basic human desire. So birth has really historically been a community event. It's been a community experienced event with relatives, friends, and care providers, sometimes known as midwives, and more as the more traditional attendees. So advice and involvement from experienced birthing people, generations above you, was the norm. It wasn't normal to go through these processes alone. So what you're feeling is really valid, and I think fostering this community can be really impactful. I want to take a minute here to let's create some community in this group. So we're going to do breakout rooms, and I'll stop the recording. So we're going to break off into pairs, and I'm going to ask you to think about a few questions, and then if anyone wants to share out when we come back from breakout rooms, that would be great. So if you weren't here in this workshop right now, what else might you be doing? Are you looking forward to anything in the near future? Or something about yourself that you like, or being pregnant? So you can talk about those with your partners, and then we'll come back and discuss as a group. Again, if you're watching this on the replay or at home, if you want to answer any of those questions and tag me at Big Fat Pregnancy, you can do so, or you can DM me. I'd love to hear what those of you at home or not watching live are thinking about. Thanks everyone for taking some time to talk about those things with your partners and share back out. Really interesting to hear what some of you are looking forward to. Obviously, COVID vaccines and potentially ending, time away from our already existing family and friends or communities. Shout out to y'all being here and creating this little community. So, obviously, right, this is one way you can have community. My whole goal here at Big Fat Pregnancy is to provide a space and a platform and a voice for fat folks, where they can come and have fat-friendly encouragement and celebration and education, and asking each other questions, right, in a place where they know that they at least won't be harmed or judged or shamed because of their weight. So some other ways that you can find community during this time in your life would be to find a birthing group in your area, searching for other fatties, birth education courses. Post-pandemic, you can look for people even in your neighborhoods, organizations that you might be a part of, sports groups, religious groups, online groups. Be aware that you might need to be a little bit more diligent about those spaces, just because they might not all be pre-approved as fat friendly. So you're always welcome to DM me, to reach out via email, and I would love to talk about this with any of you. So we're going to move on to the last concern that I have heard people mention, and this is really centered around this idea of like, I'm really scared that my weight, my shape, my size, insert reason or quote unquote truth about your body will lead to X reality, X health concern, X outcome. So I do want to take a minute to talk about miscarriage, because I believe that is one of the more common concerns that I hear in early pregnancy or trying to conceive. So I want to give a trigger warning. We're going to talk about miscarriage a little bit, and likelihood of miscarriage, and BMI. So please take a minute to either mute me or disengage for a minute, fast forward the recording if you're watching from home, if this is something that you might find triggering or you don't want to be present with right now. That's totally fine. And you may also be thinking about your odds of developing other health concerns like gestational diabetes. You might be thinking if your baby will be too big, if your baby will be healthy, if you eat X or Y. And before we go into the stats, I want to say two things. One, it's completely okay if you find yourself wondering or pondering about these things from time to time. Don't beat yourself up. Pregnancy brain leads to all sorts of things about different scenarios that may or may not happen. But two, if you find yourself really completely obsessed or having intrusive thoughts about what might happen in your pregnancy, or really intense fears that keep you from living your life or doing things that are normal as they can be in COVID, then it might be time to find a healthcare professional that you can talk to, spiritual guide, a coach, whatever works for you, but seeking some support in moving through that. So miscarriage facts from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. So these are some facts pulled from their website, where you can see that about 15 to 20% of known pregnancies end in miscarriage, about 1 in 5 for a normal BMI, and about 1 in 4 for a BMI over 30. So again, I provide these stats because for some people, these are really comforting. They're helpful to know the percentages, and the March of Dimes has an article around continuing these facts and showing that after your doctor can see and hear a heartbeat, usually around 6 to 8 weeks, the risk of miscarriage drops to about 5%. And the odds of having a second miscarriage are even smaller, less than 3%. So again, I provide these statistics because sometimes they're helpful for people, but I don't believe in BMI. I don't believe in BMI chart. I think it's racist, it's fat phobic, it's a bullshit tool. But this is what the quote unquote the experts, for lack of a better term, use in terms of evaluating who's at risk. So according to them, there is a slight risk for miscarriage if you have a higher BMI, if you're overweight, if you're over a BMI of 30. But remember, the biggest thing that you can take away from any statistics you read about miscarriage, health concerns while birthing fat is that correlation is not causation. So what that means is that you may have these attributes or characteristics like being fat, which can potentially be related to a higher risk, but they don't mean that is what will happen to you. So I like to make that very clear. Just because you're fat doesn't mean X thing will happen to you, specifically miscarriage. I've heard it before. It's atrocious. You will not miscarry your baby because you are fat. It is not proven. It is not evidence-based. There's no science behind that. I do include a resource at the bottom of the page for early pregnancy loss. If this is something you'd like to discuss further or you need resources for this, please, please, please reach out. Let me know. DM me, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. So again, I pause and I say again, I'm not a medical professional, but from what I've learned from those who are, in the conversations I've had with doctors, nutritionists, obstetricians, midwives, the research that I've done in my master's program, there's no single health condition or intervention in pregnancy that can exist solely because you have a fat body, period. So for me, at the end of the day, these concerns about miscarriage, which is a very real thing, not to minimize that it happens to people. It happens to fat people, it happens to people living in thin bodies, but it's not caused by your body shape. So if this is something that has happened to you, I'm sending you lots of love and comfort. And if it's something you're worried about, which I worried about it as well when I got pregnant, because I'd heard things like being fat contributes to miscarriage, which is bullshit. Again, I'm just going to repeat it. It's bullshit. So for me, at the end of the day, these concerns were really rooted in fear and in a lack of trust for knowing my body, which makes sense because we're taught not to listen to our bodies, not to pay attention to our bodies, not to feel the fear. We're taught to run from it. Thin people who are birthing have a different landscape than fat people who are birthing. Fat people are constantly shamed before pregnancy. So this puts us in a hyper awareness, being on guard, and being really concerned about our bodies, the decisions we make about our bodies, perceptions of us, the consequences of our actions on our unborn children. So it all adds up, and it makes sense that these things, again, are, things that you think about from time to time. But if they're consuming your thoughts, if they're all you can think about, it would be my advice to, seek some professional support with that. But I get it. It can be scary. And I think what we can focus on here and now is understanding that fear a bit more and figuring out how we might start to be aware of that fear, and then facing those fears through shifting our mindset, through a positive narrative, finding people who can support us. Because I do believe that the more we focus on those fears, the more we call them in. And having a whole pregnancy where we exist in fear doesn't do us any good for final labor and delivery, producing those good hormones like oxytocin to get things moving in labor. So I want to do a little exercise with you all that you can take with you when you're thinking about fear, or when those moments of fear come up. So, ultimately, I want you to be asking yourself, what is the truth? What's my truth? What's the truth in this moment? Not the truth that someone else has told me, but what's the truth and what's bull? And that can take a little time to figure out, especially if you haven't been in tune with your body, or you've experienced some trauma and you may not know what that is to you. And that's okay. You can take it one step at a time. I believe that the truth is that as fat birthing folks, while we may have slightly higher risks, according to these bodies, these organizations that put out statistics, which we all know are flawed, they're based on data that can be interpreted differently, that come from systems rooted in racism and bias, right? So there might be, I acknowledge that there are, higher risks for fat people, but your fat body alone is not the reason that any intervention happens. A miscarriage is not your fault. Moving from birth plan A to birth plan Z is not because of your belly fat. So I'm hoping that this identity, or this activity, can give you a bit of a place to start when thinking about your fear around bringing a child into this world. So, first, you can use this chart. I can send it in PDF if you're interested. If you want to actually use my little gingerbread man, but if you don't, totally fine. You just write it out. And the first thing that you're going to do is think about the emotion that you're experiencing, either in the moment or after it's happened, if this is not something you have access to right away. You can write it down, you can think about it. So for those of you joining me, you can take a piece of paper or your phone or whatever feels comfortable to you, and think about the emotion that you're experiencing. So you'll put it up there in that when I feel box. So when I feel fear. And then next, you're going to identify what you're thinking, how your body feels, and how you act on the left side of the little, he looks like a gingerbread man to me, or it looks like a gingerbread man to me. So identify what you're thinking. You know, I'm thinking about experiencing a health concern. I'm thinking about not being safe during delivery. And then think about how your body feels. My body feels tense. My body feels tight. My body feels anxious, scared. And then you'll input that in the little circle. And then at the end, you can say, you can write in there or brainstorm, I act this way. So when I think this way, when my body feels this way, how do I act? For me, when I'm scared, it looks like avoidance or anger or frustration or irritability, or sometimes I retreat to myself. That's what you're going to put on the left column, and take your time. You can put in as much detail into this or as little detail as you want. It can be an exercise you do over and over again. You can print some copies of this. I can send you the PDF. You can take a screenshot on your phone and mark it up on your phone. And then take a minute, think about what you wrote on the left-hand side of the column. And then on the right-hand side of the column, think about that emotion, that same emotion. So when I feel fear, and you're gonna do the same activity, but you're gonna think about how you want your body to feel, how you want to think when fear comes up, how you want to act when that same feeling comes up. And this can be used for anything. It can be fear, it can be excitement, it can be joy, it can be anxiety, you know, any fear. It can be good or bad. I mean, maybe you don't have a response you love when you get really excited. I don't know, you know, you can use this if it suits you, and discard it if it doesn't. So and then you can use this as a tool to start creating, you know, some mantras or some statements that help you when you encounter this. So when I feel fear, I think of all the wonderful things that will happen from bringing a child into the world. When I feel fear, I acknowledge it in my body and I release it. My body feels tense. I take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And on the breath out, I release. You know, you can go into lots of different ways that this will help you kind of move through those fears, or at least start to examine them. And you know, if anybody wants help with this exercise, if you want to do this one-on-one, shoot me an email or send me a DM at Big Fat Pregnancy on Instagram, and I'm happy to walk through anyone who maybe isn't catching this recording live with that activity. So we're going to take a minute and let those of you who are here do this activity, and we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, thank you so much everyone for sharing and giving me some really good examples of mantras to use and pass on to future clients. So I hope that was helpful for you, and I hope that was helpful for you at home. And then the you know, next piece that I want to talk about is this idea of reflection, right? We don't have a ton of time. Oops, pardon me. We don't have a ton of time in this workshop to go over, you know, kind of all of the ins and outs, all of the you know, things that you might be thinking about, you know, birthing. So I really invite you to take some time for reflection on the concerns that we've talked about here today, and some of the current concerns that maybe we haven't touched on today. And let me know what they are. Let me know what you're thinking about. Tag me if you're watching the replay. You can DM me. Let me know what you're thinking, and, you know, share this with your community. If it would be helpful, you can journal, you can meditate, you can go for a walk, you can create, you can talk to a friend, or you can talk to me, whatever, you know, gives you the space to kind of think about some of the things that we've gone over here today. Do let me know. And if you liked this, please share with your friends, your family, bring other people into this BFP community. We are growing, and the more lovely voices we have here that can support, celebrate, encourage, educate this wonderful community, the better. I'd love to see more people in this group and a part of these monthly talks. So as a reminder, these are going to be once a month, the last Thursday of every month, with rotating topics. And I invite everyone to come. Make sure you register ahead of time. I'll always put the links in my Instagram. and on my website, which should be launching tomorrow. Woohoo! And lastly, I just want to say, thank you so much for being here today. I had such a good time, talking to you about these topics, listening to your exploration of them in your groups, and I'm just really happy to be present with you. I have a post-session survey here for those of you who might be joining us from home. Let me just pop that in the chat. If you'd like to take that from home, totally fine. I'd be happy to hear your thoughts, and would love to hear more from you. So again, please share with your friends and family. If you have questions or concerns, if you're interested in a one-on-one preconception or pregnancy coaching, speaking or collaboration and engagement opportunity, please contact me. That's my email, my business line, and my DMs at BFP Pregnancy. So thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you in this space, and I look forward to seeing some of you in the future. And yeah, happy birthing.